core beliefs are formed before we can even read, write, walk, talk. And I'm just thinking, A, how does that come about? And B, how does that influence people's limiting beliefs and the stories they tell themselves?
So our core beliefs, the vast majority of our core beliefs are created by the age of 5. So if we think about a child doesn't have the cognitive ability, it doesn't have the access to the executive functions of the brain that allow us to really reframe things. So we're just seeing the world through a child's eyes. And children, when they're growing up, they have a tendency to internalize things, not necessarily at a conscious level. So say they have an experience, and it doesn't have to be a major experience, but maybe they're trying to explain something or tell a story to their mom and their dad, and maybe they're not getting the response that they're looking for. Maybe mum's just busy cooking the dinner and dad's doing something else. But if in that moment that child feels rejected, feels like they're not getting attention, they might then internalize that and make that mean something about them. Or if a child's grown up in an environment where mum and dad haven't always been present, they might have internalized that to mean something about themselves, like they're not good enough, they're not worthy. If they've gone through experiences, say, where they've been adopted, they might have developed thoughts and feelings about, again, not belonging, rejection, fears around abandonment. So those initial thoughts, which won't be conscious thoughts, they act like seeds that get planted. And so when they experience anything that reminds them of those original experiences, it just reinforces that thought. And all a belief is a thought that you keep thinking. But most people go through life with this limited thinking about themselves, which is then created into an identity. And if you never challenge that identity, if you never seek to move beyond who you think you are, then that's going to be the reality that you experience your life through. And so working with coaches or therapists, or even, just listening to podcasts or YouTube videos or reading particular books, we might hear something that sets our mind in a very different direction, where we think, actually, why is it that I think that I'm not good enough? Like, who gets to decide that? I get to decide that. But if you continue to feed thoughts about yourself that are very limiting, habitual thoughts, then that creates our experience, our inner reality.
Yeah, because I know you're saying with the seeds, they become roots, but the longer that particular seed's there, the deeper the root gets and the harder it is to get rid of said seed or said belief. How would you use your coaching hypnotherapy to on or dig up the roots, so to speak?
Well, it's not so much that they become roots, it's just that they become habitual patterns of thought. And about 90% of our thinking is habitual. So the unconscious mind works on pattern and repetition. So if we are not present to where our focus of attention is, then these habitual patterns of thought are effectively running the show at any one time. So part of it is about bringing these thoughts, these ideas that they have about themselves. It is about bringing that into the light. So a huge part of any transformation is self-awareness and being aware of where is it that you place your focus of attention. It isn't about getting rid of these habitual thought patterns in as much as it's about seeing them for what they really are. They're just habitual thought patterns. They say nothing about the truth of who they are, they say nothing about the reality. And the more that we can see that these thoughts are just that, they're just habitual patterns of thought, then the mind has its own self-correcting system, and we are given more choice about, I can use my energy, my mental energy, to keep focusing on these habitual thought patterns and stories and ideas about myself, or I can use the energy that is thought in a different way. And so when people get often tangled in their heads, more often than not, they're not even aware that they've got tangled into their heads. So the more that they create that level of self-awareness and recognize where they're placing their focus of attention on, and when they see that, that can be enough to just bring them back into the present moment. But what we can also do is using things like hypnotherapy or MAP or EFT, is we're taking very dominant thoughts that have got a dominant vibration to them, a dominant emotional vibration to them, and we're neutralizing them. And the more that we neutralize them, the less that we go and visit those old habitual thoughts in our mind, the more that we change those complex structures in the brain to experience life from a very different vantage point.